So the real Sleeping Beauty didn't get a kiss. She got assaulted, and then history called it romance. Yeah. So the version that you grew up with has a spinning wheel, a curse, true love's kiss, but 300 years before that story even existed, there was an earlier one. But there was no kiss and no consent, and the horror in it didn't disappear when the story got rewritten. It just found a new woman to attack. But more on that in just a second. Quick heads up before we get into it. Today's story, there are a few mentions of SA and attempted child murder. Obviously, I'm not going to be going into detail on either of these things, but I do want you to know that it's coming in case you need to go and take care of yourself. Thanks. Love you. Hi friends, I'm Bettie Rage, your favorite nerdy goth mom, and this hot mess here is Lashes and Lore. And if you are new here, we tell dark stories while I crochet a granny square for my Frankenblanket. We dissect the lore that people kind of gloss over, and occasionally I get genuinely unreasonable about what Disney has left on the cutting room floor. I could do a lot of these, by the way. Anyways, okay, so I said I crochet, so we're making a Blankenstein, a Frankenblanket, a Franket. It's still happening, making a new crocheted granny square from unraveled, thrifted sweaters and yarn. Still don't know what it's going to look like, but we're still working on it one square at a time. Come find me in the comments or over on Patreon if you want to talk more about it, okay? Right, so Sleeping Beauty. Everyone kind of assumes that Sleeping Beauty starts with Basile, the Italian writer whose 1634 version gets all of the credit for being dark, but it doesn't. It starts 300 years earlier, buried in a massive French romance that almost nobody's even heard of, called Perceforest. And inside is a story called Troilus and Zeladine. A princess is born, 3 goddesses attend the birth, and one of them, famous, gets insulted over the quality of knife that she's handed at the feast. And let me tell you, I'm petty, but not that petty. The quality of knife that you handed at the feast? What was the plan? Are you the one butchering the beast? Anyways, this one's a little far-fetched, and maybe I just don't understand the implications here, which is probably fair. Right. So anyways, she's upset about it, right? So she, famous, she's very insulted, and she curses the baby on the spot. So this knife situation is a bigger deal than what we assume, okay? She says that the first time that Zeladine touches flax that she's going to fall into a sleep that she cannot wake from. Now, if you are a yarn nerd like myself, then you might know that flax is what you make linen from. So there's like strips of flax and it grows. Flaxseed, good for you. Great fiber, good omega-3s. I'm going to let my personal training and nutrition certifications kind of shine here for a moment. Anyways, flax. So if she touches flax, then, she's cursed. So wait a minute. Just so that you understand, she's not touching like flaxseed or flax butter or flax oil. These are the things that we tend to have a lot of in our modern community. Flax is very splintery, and it grows in like little shoots, and not as strong as like bamboo, but it can be raked down into like fibers, and then that is how it's spun together, and you get linen, which I think this dress might actually be made of linen. So just a little, if you didn't know what that means, touching flax. So that's kind of how we pull it all back to the spinning wheel, right? I know I've got some yarn nerds in here, so I just wanted to bring that up. So the first time Zeladine touches flax, she's going to fall into a sleep that she can't wake up from. So we got our Sleeping Beauty story. Here we go. Right. She grows up. She falls in love with a knight named Troilus, and her father sends him away to prove himself. And while he's gone, yes, she touches flax exactly as promised and falls into a sleep. So Troilus, the knight that she fell in love with, comes back and finds her unconscious, and he assaults her sexually. and gets her pregnant in her sleep. She gives birth in her sleep, and she only wakes up when the baby who's searching for food actually sucks the flax splinter out of her finger, which if they had, it just feels like somebody could have figured this out before then, okay? But whatever. But here's a thread that I just can't let go of because it's going to matter again on our channel someday. Famous isn't the first insulted fairy to curse a child in French literature. About 60 years earlier, there was a play called, hang on a second, my French is terrible, like most of the things that I say, Les Jeux de la Feuillée. It's terrible. Anyway, it was written around 1276 by a poet named Adam de la Halle. 3 fairies show up uninvited to a feast, and one of them is named Morgue. Okay, cool. But Morgue gets so offended by her table setting that she curses the hosts on the spot. Folklorist Catherine Briggs pointed to the Morgue as likely the template for every wicked fairy curse that came after her, this one included. So there is a tie there. But Morgue is very possibly a French rendering of the name that you already know, Morgan Le Fay, which I know I have had requests to do a video on Morgan Le Fay, and it's coming, okay? We're gonna get there. Same instinct, different century, insult a fairy, and she'll make you regret it for like generations to come. So that one is a story to keep in your back pocket for later because we're going to come back to it. So Harvard folklorist Maria Tatar identifies this as the earliest version of the story that we now call Sleeping Beauty. Not Basile or Perrault, but this one instead, written in the 1330s, 3 centuries before anyone thought to add a kiss and consent. Anyway, so if Perceforest came first, what did Basile actually add? Well, in 1634, Giambattista Basile published Sun, Moon, and Talia in his collection, the Pentamerone. Again, it's the same structure. A princess, a prophecy about flax, a death-like sleep. A king finds her, violates her while she's unconscious, and then leaves. She gives birth to twins without ever waking up, and she only wakes when one of those babies is hunting for food, latches onto her finger, and pulls the splinter free. So, fairy tale scholar Jack Zipes has spent his career translating and collecting these original texts. And it's his English translation most modern scholars still work from when they quote Basile. In Basile's own words, the king doesn't assault Talia. He gathers in Basile's phrase, the first fruits of her love. Maria Tatar of Harvard quotes that exact euphemism in her scholarship specifically to point out something. Even the original text was already doing damage control. Basile knew what he had written. He just didn't want to say it plainly. The king, it turns out, was already married. And when he starts talking in his sleep, murmuring the names of Talia, Sun, and Moon, his wife starts asking some questions. She finds out everything, and she summons Talia's children to the palace under false pretense, and then orders her cook to kill them and serve them to the king for dinner. Yeah, wild. The cook can't do it because he has a conscience, like most people. He hides the children with his own wife and then serves the king 2 lambs instead, letting the queen believe that her plan has actually worked. She taunts her husband the entire meal, watching him eat what she believes are his own children. And then she sends for Talia, orders a bonfire built in the courtyard, and prepares to burn her alive. Yay. The king then hears Talia's screams in the courtyard and finds out the truth. So then he decides to burn his wife, his secretary, and nearly the cook until the cook reveals that the children are actually alive, and Talia and the king then get married. The story's actual closing line is translated directly, reads that he who has luck may go to bed and bliss will reign upon his head. Like, what? What? Are we saying that, like, all this stuff was good that happened to her? What? So again, the line is, he who has luck may go to bed and bliss will reign upon his head. What? Hearing that line and knowing what she survived to get there is absolute craziness. Okay, quick break so that if you want to support this channel, the best way to do it is through Reanimate Threads, which is my business where I make sustainable crochet pieces from thrifted and upcycled yarn, where things were once a sweater and now they are things like this, a tarot card holder, where you can put your cards inside and do a 3-card spread here, or if you don't have tarot card, you can literally put a small palette, some lip liner, and a lip gloss in here and keep it in a cute little pouch. I mean, it's literally just a pouch with a long wrap on it. I've got it in several colors right now. And all of these things used to be sweaters, and now they're these cute little pouches. Because I do believe that good craft should outlast fast fashion. So the shop is now open. You can get these pouches plus other things at this link right here. I was gone to Gen Con and you guys bought all of my purses. So I'm working on making some more purses. And if you're waiting for those, I'll make an update on that soon. Also, thank you for doing that. But I currently have no more purses for sale on my site. But I do have these cute pouches along with yoga straps and adorable can cozies for both normal sized cans and skinny cans because I'm a energy drink fiend. But every single one of your purchases goes straight back into me being able to make more episodes just like this. Okay, let's go back to the horror of this story. So, in 1697, French writer Charles Perrault sat down to adapt Basile's story for a very different audience, the royal court of Versailles. And he did something interesting. He removed the assault entirely. No sexual assault, no unconscious birth, but he did replace it with a spinning wheel curse and gave her a genuine kiss. But the cannibalism didn't really disappear altogether. It just kind of moved. So once the prince marries his sleeping princess, his own mother is revealed to be an ogress. So while he is away at war, she tries to eat his wife and the children. So one at a time, and is only stopped when the servant hides them and deceives her, pretty much in the same way that Basile did with the cook. Same horror, different woman assigned to commit it. First, a jealous wife trying to feed a husband his own offspring, and now a monstrous mother-in-law trying to eat her own son's family. So the violence traveled 63 years in an entire language, and nobody thought to remove that part of the story. They just needed a new person to blame it on. Yeah. So by 1812, the brothers Grimm collected their own German version, Little Briar Rose, built on an oral retelling of Perrault, not Basile directly, and this is the version that finally cuts it. No assault or cannibalistic mother-in-law, just a curse and 100-year sleep, a hedge of thorns, and a kiss. Jack Zipes has written extensively about what the Grimms were actually doing when they cleaned up these stories. So even as the material got fleshed out on the surface, the characters were flattened into one-dimensional roles built to serve a specific function for a specific audience. Children, that's the specific audience, and the parents deciding what it is that's appropriate for them to hear. So, Disney's 1959 film draws almost entirely from Perrault's structure, the curse, the kiss, the true love, and borrows only the name Briar Rose from Grimm. None of Basile or Perceforest survived. So 400 years of story in the version that reached the most people in human history kept none of what made the earliest versions true. And because it's me, and I love some TTRPGs, and I like to play some D&D, we're going to have a little quick TTRPG corner. Because this one's really kind of too much fun to skip, okay? Now, is there an official Sleeping Beauty? No, of course there isn't. However, if you do want to see dark fairy tales done right at the table, go watch Neverafter, which is a Dimension 20 horror season with Brennan Lee Mulligan behind the screen. Every player character is a fairy tale figure with the Grimm parts that they're left in. And one of them is Sleeping Beauty herself. Siobhan Thompson plays Princess Rosamond Dupree, who wakes up after 100 years covered in cuts from the briars and carrying a bow that she made out of thorns. And for my fellow sheet nerds, the build is really the best part about her character. Rosamond is a Swarm Keeper Ranger with a dip into the Circle of Stars Druid and Fighter. So, multi-class much? Swarm Keeper means that a magical swarm fights alongside you, and her swarm is the briars. So, the same thorns that trapped her in that tower for 100 years, she woke up, looked at her prison, and turned it into a weapon. And if that isn't recalling your truth, I don't know what is. Seriously, what a great way to take your trauma and turn it into your weapon. And here's why I'm bringing it up in this episode specifically. The entire premise of that season is that these stories have been rewritten so many times that the characters start to actually run into older, darker versions of themselves, which is exactly what we've been doing here for the last, 15 minutes with Sleeping Beauty. Brennan built a whole campaign out of the thing folklorists have been saying for decades, that a fairy tale is every version of itself stacked on top of each other, and the oldest layers are usually the ones with all the spikes. All right, so let's talk about it. This is the part where I get a little personal. It's my mom moment, okay? In every early version of this story, waking up isn't romantic. It's not a kiss. It's a hungry baby latching onto the only thing in reach and accidentally saving its mother's life in the process. And to me, that's not really a fairy tale detail. That is just what babies do. Like, seriously, that's what happens. They take what they need to survive without asking or knowing what they're even doing. And sometimes that ends up saving someone else too. So, and think about how many women in these stories never got to consent to anything that happened to them. Not sleeping, or what happened to them while they were sleeping, or even how they woke up from the sleep. The one part of the story that is genuinely tender, where an infant's mouth is actually pulling a splinter free, sits right next to a part that's genuinely horrifying. And Basile just lets them exist in the same sentence, like it's freaking normal or something. And then there's something else that bugs me about this story. Specifically, look at who gets blamed in every version. Like a jealous wife, a monstrous mother-in-law. Talia's own story ends with 2 women burned alive, and the king who gets to walk away and marry the woman that he assaulted. Problematic, yes, very. 400 years, 4 versions, 2 languages, and the men at the center of the story never once had to answer for what they did. The violence just kept getting handed to whichever woman was standing closest. I don't know, maybe that's the actual truth that this story has been telling for 700 years. The people who survive the worst things don't usually get a clean romantic ending. They get to keep going. And sometimes what saves them isn't a kiss from someone brave. It's something small and unglamorous and completely unplanned. And I think that's probably more honest than any fairy tale we'll ever hear. So, Sleeping Beauty. Not a curse and a kiss, a prophecy and an assault. A sleep that nobody consented to, and a wake-up call that came from a starving newborn, not really a prince. 400 years, 4 versions, 2 languages, and every single one of them had a woman that was attacked while she couldn't defend herself, and somebody had to decide whether to be the one who saved her or the one who finished the job. Basile's version, well, that ends with a line about luck, about someone who has good fortune finding it, even in their sleep. But excuse me, but Talia didn't have any luck. She had a father who couldn't bury her, a king who violated her, a woman who wanted her burned alive, and a cook who happened to have a conscience. So, if you ask me, that is not luck. That is just barely enough people making just about the right choice at just about the right moment for her to stay alive. And here we have our square for our blanket today. Little hot pink and black action. Love that. If you want the primary source, Basile's Pentamerone is where the sun, moon, and Talia lives, and Jack Sipes' translations are the ones that most scholars still work from today. So you should comment the word sleep today and let me know that you stuck around till the end. And also tell me which version of these stories actually surprised you. And if I haven't ruined your childhood story, why don't you check out this one next and see if maybe that one will do it. Made it to the end of our story. I'm Bettie Rage, your favorite nerdy goth mom, and this is Faye. Be good to each other, love each other, and make good choices. As always, free mom hugs from me to you. Bye. I'll see you in the next one. Can I get whoop? Ooh, that's a big one. Can I get whoop?